Good afternoon, Albert JTV community. Life Stories has recommenced. Episode 22 with a very special guest in the house. But before we get into it, people, let's play the Life Stories intro once again. Albert JTV community, it is certainly good to be back. A Life Stories exclusive. Hashtag episode 22. For their time in the hot seat, I'll be joined by the brilliant, award-winning TV presenter and journalist for ITV News and fellow Gooner, Antoine Allen. Hashtag top tier guest. Good afternoon, Albert JTV community. Life Stories is back. It has been a long time. Episode 22. My special guest has made the 22-man squad. I have to apologize, people, firstly, because if you picked up any background noise, it was the ice cream man doing his daily routine around my area. So if you heard the fancy music, then you know why. But people, obliterate the like button and share and subscribe, people. But I've got a very special guest with me. This has been in the pipeline for a very, very long time, but I'm also very conscious. Antoine is a very, very, very busy man. But it's a pleasure to get award-winning journalist presenter Antoine Allen. Welcome to Albert JTV, my friend.
Albert, thanks for having me on the show.
No, I appreciate it, man. And like I said, I know you're a busy man, and it's great to get you on, man. Obviously, met you in person when I was working, and you was working in the beautiful sunny streets of SE15 in Peckham, and we met. I think it'll be technically 2 seasons ago now. We played Bournemouth at home. It was a midday kickoff at the Emirates, and we met and had a good chat. But no, great to get you on, man. So people, show some love to Antoine. He's amazing. Antoine, I want to say firstly, I know you had a recent trip to Downing Street, I believe so, in terms of the Windrush generation. How was that, man?
So I got a personal invite,
Wow.
which was in recognition of the work I've been doing. And I think it's always good to know what it's like inside the system, even if you hold power to account, i.e. the job of a journalist. It wasn't like a political meeting, it was a celebration of those in the Windrush community or the descendants of Windrush people who were doing good things for the community. I think it's also a great place for networking. So I haven't started, but I'm going to be working on a documentary on the rising cost of soul food. So your Caribbean cost of jerk chicken, oxtail, curry goat. So all of that. And at that meeting, I met someone who had already interviewed regarding a new blood donation campaign where he runs Royal, what are they called? Park Royal parties. Okay. He runs that, and he essentially teamed up with the NHS where they've got a QR code on the parties now, so people can scan it and sign up to give blood. He then connected me to another restaurant owner from the Caribbean community. So it was just a great place to meet good people. The Prime Minister gave a speech of acknowledging the nurses, the doctors, the engineers, the bus drivers, all the people that come from the Caribbean and the Windrush community, but also acknowledging the Windrush scandal, which continues until this day. So it's both holding power to account and making sure that people get their money, people get compensated for what the Home Office put them through, but also celebrating the people who've done so much for this country. Many of them are footballers. So it was a great experience. When you go into Downing Street, you have to give your phone away, so it means you can't take pictures. That's why everybody basically has pictures outside of the door, which is the main thing. Like, a house is a house, but inside is kind of like a museum of past cabinets and past prime ministers. You just see all of their pictures or paintings on the walls. That's quite cool. But it's just, the main thing was really just the networking and meeting people and speaking to people who you've either interviewed before, you've seen their work, but to get everyone in the same space was quite powerful.
No, big respect to you, Antoine. Yeah, I saw that picture a few days ago. I thought, I've definitely got to ask him just a little bit of what was going on. But no, great stuff, man. People, Antoine actually has his channel, obviously, talking about his interviews and documentaries. The YouTube link is in the bio, so just click on it. You can do that and multitask. So do 2 things at once, people. You can do it and follow Antoine's great work. But as I like to kick off on Life Stories, Antoine, and to many guests I've had on here, like I said, episode 22. If people don't know already, they should know. Antoine is an Arsenal fan. So I want to ask him his Arsenal story, his first memories, influences supporting the club, and obviously you have a background of working with an Arsenal. So if you could tell the viewers in whatever order you want to start, Antoine, you go ahead.
So my first Arsenal memory, which I tried to research, I couldn't find it. And Arsenal played a testimonial in Northampton, and I'm from Northampton.
Okay.
And I can still remember I went there with my mum. I think I was maybe like 7 or something like this. And Ian Wright walked past us. He was pitch side, but we were above. But Six Fields isn't very big.
Yeah.
I remember him walking past. I want to say it was like 4-3 to Northampton, but I just can't remember the exact score. Like I definitely can't find it now. But that was my first memory of seeing Arsenal. Obviously, it's a testimonial side, so it wasn't the full team. My friend, his dad got a season ticket to Aston Villa because that was the closest Premier League club to Northampton at the time. So he took me to Arsenal, that's Aston Villa, at Villa Park. And I think the game was a draw. And then my school took us to Arsenal versus Bolton. And I remember back at the Highbury, if you're on a school trip, you had to wait in the car park, which was underneath the stadium, to leave. So we were waiting there. And I remember Amir Khan came down the stairs. And I got him to sign my shirt, sign my Arsenal shirt, because he's from Bolton, so obviously he's a Bolton fan. That was super random. But so those are my kind of initial memories. And then applied for uni, needed to get some money. And as if by magic, Arsenal just about to move into the Emirates. So I applied to become a steward. The interview was at Highbury in just one of the back rooms. You had to do a task to begin with to show teamwork. Then they ask you, why do you want to be a steward? And the following season, I was an Arsenal steward, and I was an Arsenal steward for 11 years. Wow. Probably should have been sacked the first year because I was barely turning up. I was a student. So I had that student money, so I didn't actually need the money, need the job.
People.
Yeah, and then the student money ran out, so I did need the job. So then eventually I took it more seriously. Became a supervisor, ended up being a senior supervisor there. So by the time I left, essentially, obviously you've got ground floor, you've got upper tier, lower tier, and you've got club level. So I was the senior supervisor for upper tier. Sorry, I completely forgot, for club level. So it meant that half of it was me and half it was a person called Tyler Fayose. Now Tyler's an actor. So have you ever seen the BBC series about school? I completely forgot the name, but he acts in that. He's been in some other films. And at the same time, we were both kind of dreaming of doing our professions. Like his acting hadn't exploded yet. My TV stuff hadn't exploded. So Arsenal was how we paid our bills. So he did half and I did half. There was times when I had to walk Tony Adams for interviews, walk Xhaka for an interview. I think I might have walked Per Mertesacker into, there's a room specifically for children with autism or other neurodiversity disorders. So I walked from there to meet the kids. There's loads of times when I interacted with these players from a work capacity, but the goal was still to be reporter, presenter. So I was still doing all of that, but just wasn't really getting anywhere at that point in time. I was building experience. And eventually I was given a job at One Football in Germany. So it meant I had to leave not just Arsenal, but the whole country.
Wow.
So that was kind of the turning point in my career. I'd done lots of events. So I presented the Rugby World Cup, interviewed Jonah Lomu, then the playoff finals, done lots of just little events really, but this was the first kind of full-time job I was offered. Left the country, did football for like half the year. Then I presented some documentaries on blackface in Europe, came back to the UK and kind of messaged some people I knew at Arsenal, said, look, I've been doing this football presenting for a while now. And they offered me a job as the matchday presenter alongside Kelly Summers, a guy at Radio 1 whose name I've forgotten. He was Nick something. Then another person who's actually a Southampton fan. So 4 of us were taking turns presenting this matchday show, but it was the first season they were doing it properly. Laura Woods used to do it, but then she went to Sky. So it was in the basement. It wasn't pitch side. Apart from the beginning, we'd read out the names of the players. So it meant it wasn't really ready yet. It was in its infancy. I then got offered a job at ITV, so I couldn't do both because the shows just didn't match up. So then having to leave it. But now I think they call it N15 now, because they do it in a box. It's got more energy. There's more fans involved. So it's really evolved since I was doing it. But it was a great experience, like to go from a steward to presenting for the Arsenal, and then now when I go back every so often when I'm lucky, I'm watch it from the director's box. So there's probably no steward who's done what I've done in terms of you've gone from walking the players around the pitch, kicking fans out that are doing madnesses, to then you're eating in the director's box next to, I don't know, David Dean, who's not always there, but it's good when he's there. Thomas Tuchel, Keir Starmer. He won't know that I was there. But, who else? Per Mertesacker, pretty much when he was there. Edu when he was there. So it's kind of crazy, like the journey I've been on as an Arsenal fan. I don't think anyone else would have gone on this journey apart from maybe a player in a different perspective. So yes, that was me. That was my Arsenal connection. So I went from just a fan in the stand to interviewing Arsene Wenger to sitting in the boardroom to doing all kinds of stuff that Arsenal related, and I have no more red kit. So I've got lots of Arsenal bragging rights. On
that. No, great story, man. Because obviously, I obviously had a conversation with you before in terms of you told me about being a steward at Arsenal, but I didn't know in terms of how quick the turnaround was from doing that to obviously. We'll move on to sort of the presenting part. Actually, it'll move into a segue quite nice, actually. So no, great. I like to always find out, because obviously I've had people on for Life Stories who are not Arsenal fans. So it's always great to hear their story about their attachment to their club and how they got into it, and in terms of the careers they've gone down, whether it be TV presenting or content creating. So it's great to hear your stuff, man. But this leads nicely into the second part. Can't wait to hear your answer. So TV presenting / journalism, was this something you always wanted to do from the outset? And how did the journey sort of start from you? So #career path, my friend.
So I wanted to be a barrister to begin with. I used to watch a lot of movies that have barristers in or solicitors in, and think, man, that's what I want to do. I want to kind of speak up for people, and hold power to account in terms of getting people off who have been wronged by the justice system. So I initially started studying law when I first came to London. That's why I needed a job at Arsenal. And then I switched to war studies. So I realised that actually it wasn't so much the solicitor part that I enjoyed. It was the speaking and the speaking for people and highlighting causes. And I realised I watched a lot of documentaries. So I studied war studies at King's because I'd watched a lot of documentaries by a person called John Pilger, who's dead now, but I was able to meet him before he died. And that was the goal. Like, I wanted to present documentaries, but I've always wanted to be a good interviewer. And that could be sport, that could be news, it could be social issues, whatever it is. I just wanted to be someone who asks a good question. And then someone's like, that's a good question. And then you go on a journey with each question, you listen, and it kind of flows like that. So I was lucky enough that during my time, I was like, okay, I want to make documentaries, but I need to build a show reel. I was just applying for every job I could get. So to begin with, I was hosting live music at the O2 Academies, then the Rugby World Cup, then 2 UEFA Champions League final, one in Milan, one in Cardiff, for the fan zone. So bit by bit, because I was working with brands, it meant that I was connected with very high profile VIP sports people. Jonah Lomu, Martin Johnson, Sebastian Chabal in the rugby world. Then it was Edgar Davids, Ruud Gullit, Gianluca Zambrotta, Ryan Giggs, David James. These are all the interviews I did before I was in the mainstream media. So I was building up like a big profile of big interviews in my show reel. Plus I was just at good events and good names, blah, blah, blah. So that was how I was building it. But the nature of TV is hard to get a break. It's hard to really get into. So I'd applied for the BBC journalism scheme 3 times and I was rejected. 3 times.
Wow. Tough.
And they don't give you a reason, you just get rejected. So through that, each time you get rejected, you kind of keep trying to improve. You don't know what they're looking for, so you're doing more of your own stuff, and it kind of takes you in a different direction. So I used to get a lot of events work, a lot of hosting, and as soon as I went to Germany, it meant that I was no longer here. And it got to a level where some people would fly me back over to host the events, but you'd have to have like a big budget to do that. So for the most part, the work I'd built up started to diminish because I wasn't in the country to do the work. But with that said, the fact that I was like hosting football every day, that was a whole different section of my show rule now. But I don't speak a lick of German, so it was like at some point I needed to come home. I was like, if I can't make it at home, I can't really make it in Germany. Really, even though if I think I stayed in Germany, my life would have been okay. It'd be different, but it would have been okay. So I came back here. At this point, my show role would have been pretty good. Lots of big names, lots of big sports names, some international documentaries in there, like I said. So at this point, I'd done the Asian Athletics Championship in India. I was the stadium announcer and the host. I'd done 2 events in America. I'd been in 2 UEFA Champions League final week. So basically, the week leading to the actual final, there's a series of events that get hosted and all kinds of stuff happens. So then lots of high-profile stuff. Basically, that was all squeezed into my show role. Then I saw a training reporter role at ITV News London. Applied for that, and they must have had all of the experience from documentaries to sport that they were like, okay, you can use them basically in the news. You just need to learn how we do things here, and that's what happened. Basically, I got that training reporter role, but I was like 30, so I'm 37 now. So it meant that most people who are in the media, they begin as producers or assistant editors, or they're picking up phone calls or whatever. Whereas I walked straight in as a reporter,
right?
TV reporter, which is kind of unheard of to an extent. So it meant you're kind of learning some bits on the job, but you already have a certain skill set. It's just maneuvering that skill set and how the news works. So within 6 months, I made the most watched piece of original content there, which is an interview with a documentary about Chuba Akpom, his journey from being the youth player to becoming invincible at PAOK FC. I made a series of just good interviews. And from there, I was kind of just building a reputation for sports interviews, but I'd always been motivated to do more than just sports. I wanted to help people. I wanted to shine a light on inequality. I wanted to hold power to account. I wanted to give people a chance to tell their stories. So to begin with, I think people resonated with me just to have a good interview style. But then bit by bit, people started sending me their stories. So during Black Lives Matter was when probably my biggest story started happening, where it was around police brutality or even housing, just a series of stories affecting working class people, affecting black people, started to report on. And from there, it kind of took my work to a higher level. But at the same time, I'm still doing my sports stories as well, which meant the combination of the two, the social issues, the community issues, the home affairs issues, was combined with the sports stories. Hence why when Arsenal wanted to do youth violence, I was able to report on that exclusively off the back of the body of work that I'd done before. So yeah, that's how my journey kind of started, and then since then it's progressed.
Now it's cool to know, because I was going to say, you kind of touched on it when you're giving your answers in regards to, I mean, with myself sort of doing YouTube channel, I knew obviously when I started it, I think it's 5 years ago, this month I started it. I knew pretty quickly it wasn't just going to be specifically about Arsenal. I was going to try and branch out and talk about other things. And actually, I was probably spoken about, definitely, I've spoken about social media, and I spoke about racism as well, specifically. So I knew pretty early on I didn't just want to pigeonhole myself just to one sort of thing that I wanted to do. So it's interesting for you to say that. So you said you've done your highlight reels and you tried to get into sort of what you wanted to do. So how long was that from till you got the break with ITV, like time frame wise?
So to get into the mainstream media, that would have been maybe 10 years.
Wow.
Because I had my law course, switched. So during the time when I'm studying war studies, that's when I'm kind of beginning the presenting. trying to do documentaries. And documentaries is even harder. So obviously recently I've had 2 documentaries on ITVX, but that's kind of through the news. I've still not, me who's award-winning journalist, still has not been commissioned to do a documentary where they've come up to me and be like, Antoine, we want to give you 60 minutes. Yeah. So that hasn't happened. So that part of me hasn't actually accomplished that. Now I've done documentaries myself, so many times, but in terms of a channel saying, hey, we want you to make this documentary, that hasn't happened. And that's me who's like levels. So it's a situation where that journey is still ongoing. In terms of the TV version of me, like the ITV London, ITV News version, so that was essentially like an 8 to 10 year period to get to that point. But before that, I'd done a lot in independent media. So it meant that from events to video to YouTube, I built up a lot of experience. But to enter the mainstream, that's where I only started it when I was 30, and now I'm 37.
Nice. It's important. That's why I was glad to get you on, because obviously I knew the questions I was going to prep to ask you, and obviously doing the line of work that you do, that because we've had discussions where breaking down barriers in particular industries is more than difficult. And I think some of the answers you've even given just to that particular question demonstrates that. So sort of like a sub question to that, obviously getting your expertise, is somebody that wants to, what's the best advice you've been given sort of your journey coming into journalism, sort of documentary world, and for someone wanting to get into this? Obviously
I think in today's world, in terms of getting into it, build your own. So because of social media, if I went back in time, I probably wouldn't even go into mainstream media. I'd have carried on as a YouTuber.
Wow.
It's just I stopped. So my YouTube channel has like 25,000 subscribers, but I'm on TV, so I haven't got time to do both.
Yeah, of course.
And when you can't serve 2 masters, essentially, you can only dedicate yourself to one, and bit by bit you can maybe build the other. But it's different with news, because the news, I say news is like a buffet. It changes all the time. Whereas let's say, I know Ade at DAZN, he just does boxing or football. So his boxing channel will grow alongside his boxing presenting, because they're the same thing. So he can just do more on his channel, and then he can do his normal job. But when you're news can be different. I can do Windrush, I can do blood donations, I can do football. So then when you put that all on your channel, unless then people who follow you love you, and even then they might not like the news. So it doesn't really work when you repurpose it. Interviews kind of do to an extent. So my AJ interview has like 780,000 views. But AJ's like a unique person. So and then even since then the views don't go crazy for AJ. So it's a situation where if I was to tell someone, like if I go into schools, I'm like, if you want to be media, then work hard on your own platforms, because eventually people will come to you anyway because you've got prominence. But be conscious of what you say. If you want to go down the avenue of doing silly stuff or controversial stuff, then it's going to close doors. So whatever choice you make, you've got to have ownership of that choice. Now, if you're someone who's like, no, actually, I don't want to be on social media, I want to be in the box in people's rooms in whatever capacity, then you've got to find a way into those channels. So Channel 5, Channel 4, ITV, BBC, Sky News, Al Jazeera, I don't know, CNN. Like there's a few channels, but it's like all of the people in that build design. A lot of the people in that building want to be on TV. So the people you see on TV are essentially the top of the mountain, and there's lots of people below them who are trying to climb into that spot. So it means that you need to do something that makes you stand out. You need to have someone who's supporting you on that journey. You need to do something unique, because some people get into unique correspondent positions because they speak a language, or they're from a region, or they've got a specific knowledge base. That's not always the case. Sometimes the person who's a correspondent for a certain subject isn't an expert in that subject until they start doing more of that subject. But it depends where you work for that. And just finding out what you want to do, what you want to stand for, what type of stories you like, and applying for as many jobs as you can. There's more positions to write than there is to talk, i.e. be on TV. Like TV world still enjoys someone who can write an article. You can also write your own articles. It's harder in higher production to make something that's video. You're the camera person, producer, editor, reporter. Like it adds up. Yeah, it adds up. But at the same point, through YouTube, obviously, we know you can film stuff yourself. So the ability to be proactive is the biggest way you can get into media. But understanding that there's more footballers than there are journalists, TV journalists specifically. So it means that it's a competitive field. And whatever you do, you need to make sure that you're bringing something that's obviously certified, but also unique from some kind of perspective. And you just network. So I'd say a lot of jobs go to people who just network, who someone likes, or they want to give them a chance, they want to give them an opportunity. But it's an industry that's slowly dying because less people watch the news. People get their information from social media. So it's finding a way to navigate that uncertain future, but also build a career for yourself. So it's not easy. Like when people ask me, well, how can I get in? Like my journey in wasn't conventional. So I'm not really the person who can say I began as an A&E, I began as a producer. So I didn't. And I don't think you can even do my journey now because the kind of jobs that I was getting when I was younger would go to an influencer now.
Yeah.
So again, building your own socials, building your own prominence is probably as good, if not better, than just refining your skills. Now, at the same point, if you've got a big following but you can't present, then yeah, you might get a couple paychecks, but that might be the end of your career. But after a while, it's not that hard asking questions. It's not that hard hosting an event. You get better at it. And also, there's no barometer of good or bad, really and truly. If the client liked what you did and the engagement was good in terms of comments and views, then it doesn't really matter how you did it, as long as you don't say something stupid that makes them look bad as a brand or channel. So it's a process, really. But then understanding, like, what do you want to do in your life? Like, what do you want to achieve? What do you want to stand for? Like, obviously, my award's there, the shirt's there, but I never got into reporting or journalism to win awards, to get shirts. I just wanted to have interesting conversations and make documentaries and help people. If you have that as your goal in terms of something, whatever that something is, it can push you forward, and bit by bit you'll meet the right people and you'll find your space. And that space might not be mainstream media. It could be independent media, it could be your own production company, it could be your own channel, whatever it is. You can eventually get to the same position as where I am, but through your own journey, and everyone's journey is going to be different.
No, absolute knowledge and facts, Anton. And you know what it is as well? I think sort of being involved in the YouTube side of it, and I always bang on about networking, always bang on about it. I mean, the amount of people, Anton, I've come across who started out in YouTube, I've never seen them again for about 2-3 years now, because the consistent the work you have to put in and YouTube is so saturated, particularly in the football side of it. There's so many channels. So like you say, it's very, very true. It's very, very difficult to stand out. Very, very difficult.
You have to come with something very unique and a completely different angle. So obviously there's Jordan, who does long play, who's just kind of blown up now, which is great in terms of him looking at the business of sport. Yeah. And he said there was no one really doing that. He started doing it, and now he's doing really well with it. So it's doable, but the social media space has a lot of copycats. And sometimes someone can copy something better than the person that originally did it. So that's the most frustrating thing. But with that said, it's like if you do it with energy, I always think there's billions of people in the world, so you'll find your audience. It's just consistency, likability, and giving people something that's value for money, like in terms of their time. And if you do that, then eventually the views and the subscribers and all that stuff will come. It's just making sure that you speak to the right people and you make the right connections. I'll give you an example. When I was a steward, maybe it was like the third day or something like that, Robbie from Arsenal Fan TV was trying to film at the top level of when you walk into the stadium. So that level, but that's Arsenal ground. And obviously he's not a rights holder. So they were in my ear, tell that person with the camera they need to leave. So I had to go up to Robbie Lyle and say, hey, sorry, man. Like they said, you can't film up here. He's like, where can I film? I said, you're going to have to be down there, like, you know, where the pavement is. That's where you can film, but you can't film up here because it's Arsenal property. This is obviously way back when. This is like
Yeah, of course.
beginning of the Emirates times. So he barely remembers that story. But
Yeah.
I always remember this story because obviously his channel's blown up.
Yeah,
He's
of course.
doing this thing. But that shows the journey. He
Mm-hmm.
used to just be Robbie and one camera person. Now he's built a whole media empire. And that shows what's possible. And he's kind of been, not even kind of, he's a pioneer in that space. He's a pioneer for giving people opportunity. He's a pioneer of what's possible outside of the mainstream media. Like he has interviewed the Prime Minister. He's interviewing like huge names. And on top of that, he's giving opportunities to other people. You can't be the next Arsenal fan TV,
No,
but
you
you
can't.
can be your next anything.
Mm-hmm.
You can build your own thing, but just try and work out like how can I do this in a way where I'm authentic to myself and also I'm having fun, I'm enjoying it, and
That's the
it
key
could
thing.
maybe become a career one day, but it's not going to be a career for everyone. I always say like this, if Lou Ferrou started today, there'd be no Lou Ferrou. If KSI started streaming today or doing whatever today, there'd be no KSI. Some people start at the right time. So you need to find a way, people need to find a way for this time, how they're going to build their channel, they're going to build their brands. And then from there, like it's a process of just like a marathon, just not giving up. If you give up before you reach the finish line, you don't know when the algorithm was going to show you your channel to some people and you would have got the views. Exactly. You just got to keep doing it. And that's where the passion comes in. If you don't have the passion for it, it's just not going to continue. And I think it's the easiest thing in the world, especially with sport, is most people love sport. Like when I was a YouTuber, I wasn't a sport YouTuber. I used to talk about social issues. I used to talk about police brutality. I used to talk about racism. That like grates your soul each time you make a video. Like it's heavy on your heart. So it's not easy to maintain that because you're constantly talking about trauma. You're constantly explaining trauma. The comment section's crazy wild. Like there's comments that are kind of wild when you do sport, but when you're actually talking about racism, the comment section's all crazy with it. So it's like there's harder things in life than making sport. So if someone wants to be a sports broadcaster in any capacity, then just stick with it and just your passion will come through the microphone. But then if you're not actually passionate about it, that also won't come through. And that will be a wake-up call maybe to yourself that actually maybe this is not for me.
No, well said. People, Antoine speaks, man. So listen, man, trust me. People, when you do watch this back, whether it's live or you watch it back, I also put this out on the audio, whatever your download podcast you listen to, it will be available to hear me and Antoine's dulcet tones, man. So we're going to take a very different direction because this is what Life Stories is about. So Antoine, sporting heroes. Who were your sporting heroes growing up in the world of sport? Football or outside of football, female and male sports stars, hashtags, icons, my friend.
So I remember back in the day, me and my family, Northampton's a rugby town.
Yeah, it is.
We used to watch the rugby like as a family, and we'd always be supporting New Zealand. And Jonah Lomu was like my hero because he was like my family's hero. So we'd watch Jonah like just obliterate various teams.
England,
I can always remember those moments, just me and my family just being around watching them. And so Jonah was my hero growing up. Not like religiously, but just like he was a person I kind of looked up to. I didn't really know his story, but he was an icon. And then Jonah Lomu, rugby came out. Like he was the guy at that period. Obviously, as an Arsenal fan, Thierry Henry, as someone I did athletics when I was younger. So Michael Johnson was those people who I kind of looked up to. So those are the three really. Lucky enough to interview Jonah Lomu before we died. So that was like a huge moment. Yeah, that was a huge moment for me. And I told him that he was one of my heroes. That's why if I had to name one person, it would have to be Jonah. I literally said, "You're my hero" to him. And he's a good guy, like a really good guy. Like, obviously, I've met a lot of people in my life, but Jonah lived up to that. He was everything.
He's very young when he passed, wasn't he, Antoine? He's very young.
He was young. Young, left the family behind.
Yeah,
man. Just a good guy. It was a sad day. So yeah, that was Jonah. And then in terms of a woman, it had been probably Serena Williams.
Great shout.
In terms of just the legendary duo of her and her sister, obviously in tennis, everything they achieved, the work of their father, the barriers they broke down, the people they've inspired. I always say the test of an icon or a legend or a hero is not their own achievements, it's who has come since them. Like who have they inspired to pick up that racket, to pick up the club, to pick up the ball.
Coco
If
Gauff.
they're not inspired anyone, Coco Gauff, exactly.
Yeah.
If they haven't inspired anyone, then I'm like, well, you did a lot for yourself, but what did you do for everyone else?
Legacy.
And yeah, so it's a case where Serena's legacy we see now. That's why I kind of, obviously Tiger Woods is a legend, but the legacy we don't really see in terms of another person of color coming through the ranks in golf, and that probably person is going to be his son, but we don't see it beyond someone that's related to him. I wouldn't say that's his doing, but at the same point, like for me, if you're the first black person to do something, you shouldn't be the last. Your job is to make sure that someone else comes through, or, which he probably has done, it's easier for that next person to come through because you've broken down those barriers, you've called out that inequality, you've made it so the struggles that you go through don't get repeated. Like I have a phrase that I put on a tie clip as well, is change is like a relay race, and each generation has to take the baton a little bit further. So the next generation isn't running the same distance. In order to do that, doesn't mean you can complete the race. It doesn't mean that I can end races. It doesn't mean that you're going to end races. It just means that we made it a little bit easier for the next generation, and they go a little bit further and further and further, and eventually someone gets to the finish line. So that's why I think Serena's done a good job. In terms of when I got older, LeBron James for me is the icon because he sets all kinds of standards. He came from a single parent background. He has built a school. He is a family man. He is a businessman. He is somebody that's inspiring others. He does call out inequality. He's done everything he can be to be a good person, and he still keeps it real to himself. It's quite easy to be great at the sport, great at business, but not care about the community. Or to care about the community, to be good at the sport, but not be a good businessman. He's everything and more. And so that's why I always say there's a difference between being the best and being the greatest. Best can be measured in times and achievements and records. Greatness is something that goes beyond what's tangible. It's your impact. It's the feeling people have when they're around you, the feeling they get when they watch you, the feeling they have when they talk about your stories. That's why I would say LeBron is the greatest basketball player, whereas Jordan may well be the best, because LeBron's the greatest. And that's how I measure all sports people in terms of their greatness versus them being the best. Like some might have the best stats, but might not be the greatest. So yeah, hopefully that answers your question.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm not going to bore people with mine because they've heard mine for probably the 21 episodes before you. So, but no, I'm a big athletics fan. I always have been, to be honest with you. First Olympics, 92, Linford was a big influence. Kelly Holmes medaled more or less every game she was in, but to be at the peak for the one time she was actually injury free in her career, double gold medalist, unbelievable. You couldn't write it. So yeah, there's loads. John Alomi, as you mentioned, I love my rugby union. Not so much league now. It's Martin Afire, of course, a legend. Jason Robinson. These are guys I still talk about now, even when I watch them and they're retired. But great influences and great players. And you know what? Sometimes, Antoine, I see you on screen, your colleague Kafa Pata, growing up watching Trevor McDonald and you like some Moira Stewart. You have to see representation, man. And that's how I grew up kind of watching the news, to be honest with you, because many people know my Nigerian background. My dad was an army background, and when the news at 10 was on, man, you had to sit down and watch it. There was no one could talk nothing. So me and my two older sisters and myself, that's where we still grow up now, even now. I know you talk about social media is coming up and you can find stuff out quicker than that way, and news is a little bit dying out a little bit. But I've always grown up being an 80s kid, 90s kid, watching the news, and you know the work you do and the way you do it, superb. But no, great answer. So we're going to move on to the next one. I was always keen, you know, when I knew I was going to get you on, just one question that kind of came to my head. I was like, because sometimes emotionally when I see you guys, because you don't always report on, I don't know what the percentage is in terms of the good stuff you report on and the very, very bad stuff you report on. You know, people's lives being taken and knife crime and gun crime and like, how does it, describe a sort of a typical day for you? And
so basically, obviously the news doesn't make the news, so
Yeah.
we go off what's happened.
Yeah.
Sometimes it can be an announcement from the government, which you get a little bit of a heads up for that. But
Okay.
other times it can be, sadly, a teenager lost their life in South London,
Yeah.
or North London, and West London, East London. And then you go there and you see. So, beginning of the day, you can be assigned a story based from the planning team, where they're like, go to Hounslow. There's a story about blood donations at a factory. And then I go and I make that story. So you take whatever the press releases or whatever information they've gathered. They say you're going to interview this person, and then you put it all together whilst you're there in terms of the interview. You're thinking of visually, what can I do to tell this story for the voiceover? So you're filming the process, and then you do the interview, and then you come back and you edit it that day, and it goes on TV at 6 o'clock. So you've got until 6 o'clock basically to have your TV done. They can actually play it during the show, which has happened a few times when it's super tight. You don't want to be doing that because it's dangerous, but it gets done a few times when you're like right up to the wire, and the editor literally has to press play when they say in his ear, play. Like, it's kind of crazy that we still do that, but it happens because the nature of it. But let's say, like example, when the Queen died, I was doing a story about racquetball.
Yeah.
We get a message, the Queen's died. Everybody's got to go to different places. Windsor Castle, Buckingham Palace. And from there, you just react. So whatever was the news schedule that day kind of gets thrown out the window.
Yeah,
and everything just works towards that. Again, you might be working on the story up until 3, 4 p.m. and a major incident happens. Terror-related, a fire, a shooting, a stabbing, wherever it is. If you're the person that they think, well, your story can hold for tomorrow, then they'll send you to wherever it is. You turn up there. Sometimes you've got to do what we call voxes. So voxes is where you interview someone on the street and you just ask them the same question. Then you get like 3, 4 people in a row saying, I saw this, or I witnessed this, or I feel this. You might have an expert that's set up. So when I interviewed you, we met outside at Arsenal.
Yeah.
You were the expert, you were the fan. So then we can kind of film that as a pre-record, and we go back and we include that into the piece. So it depends. Some things can be planned and some things aren't. So example, anyone is interested to see my work on YouTube right now, if you type in tool theft and ITV News, or shoplifting and ITV News, you can see both of my documentaries, which are on YouTube and ITV News page. There we go. That's the picture. But this is actually it's actually the thumbnail for the ITVX documentary. So if you've got someone who's got ITVX, exactly what I just said, type in tool or type in shoplifting, it'll come up and you'll see that. So yeah, in terms of these, the nature of a documentary is planned. Like, it's a process. It's something that you have to arrange. So I'd contacted various bodies such as the NPCC, which is the National Police Chief Council. I spoke to the Met. I spoke to Mighty Securities. So they operate in many different stores. They provide a security guard. They do the CCTV. They're watching everything. And then victims. So you add all these things up to make a piece. But both of those are over 15 minutes long. So you're thinking visually, like a drone shot here, interview there, cutaway there, graphic here. So you're thinking all of these things, because that's long term though, and you're piecing it all together. So you'd film that over weeks rather than an on the day story. So ITV News is an hour long show, and at 7 o'clock is like the special where it's longer. So the tool theft was at 7 p.m., which means it can be longer.
Yeah.
So that was a combination of speaking to a victim, going on a boot sale raid, following some activists, and going to some boot sales by myself, and then speaking to the government. All of that gets condensed into 5 minutes.
Oof, yeah.
Shoplifting was 7 minutes on ITV London. The longer version of tool theft was 10 minutes on ITV London, but the full length version is 17 minutes online. So that's a process. The main issue with those longer ones is when you are editing. So you're down with the editor and you're piecing it all together. But the more you put it down, the more opinions other people are going to have of change this, do this, blah, blah. But with this, apart from scriptural changes, most people actually really pretty much liked it straight away in terms of the way that we did it. So normally I'm dyslexic, so I'm happy for people to give me advice on the scripts, because there's always going to be a chance where I'll make a mistake. So that's where the teamwork kind of comes in. But in terms of answering your question, the on the day stuff, you got to get it done by 6 o'clock. So you can only think so visual, you can only interview someone for so long. But when it's long form, you're trying to make it work. You want to get it perfect, and then you move on, and then you got giving yourself the best shot to put it all together. But I'll give you an example in terms of something that can happen. ITV has a foreign show called On Assignment. So
watched it.
So On Assignment is when you're sent on assignments, hence the name. So the first one I ever did was gun crime in Sweden, which was really well set up. Pretty much everything we wanted to do, we did. Spoke to some victims, spoke to an expert, drove around with the police. Police didn't find any guns, but they showed us inside a Swedish police station, which was kind of crazy. But then the second one I did was Mayotte, which is an island.
Cheeto, is it? Yeah, I saw that.
It's an island in the Indian Ocean. The actual video is on my YouTube if someone wants to watch it. So it's an island in the ocean. It's a French colony. France has lots of these departments or colonies outside of France. But ordinarily, the people who live there have the same rights as anyone else in French territory, i.e. mainland France. But because Mayotte is so close to the Comoros Islands, which isn't French, and then also Africa, which again isn't French, they have a problem with both asylum seekers and illegal immigration.
Yeah.
So France's solution to this was basically saying that the only way you could be French in Mayotte from this point onwards is if both of your parents are French. So that meant that you wouldn't get French citizenship if you just happened to be living there for however many generations, if you're French. So if both your parents weren't French to begin with. So we went there to see whether that particular rule change is going to stop the small boats. Everybody in the UK knows we've got our own small boats issue. So when I got there, the fixer, i.e. the person who lives there, who knows the place, didn't turn up. So all we had was a teacher who'd been agreed to be our driver, who happened to speak English. And he drove us around. And from there, me and the shoot producer, so that shoot producer is somebody who can film and also produce. Me and him made a film. We seen asylum seekers on the street, so we rocked up. I started talking to them. As soon as they said, yeah, we're happy to be interviewed, I got the producer to come out of the car with the camera. Because sometimes when people see a camera, they get scared. But I'd spoken to him a bit, and they were like, cool. So he filmed. They wanted to be anonymous, so we had to think of a way of getting it to be visually good, but also blurring. So I was like, well, everybody looks at me. The camera's going to be behind you. And I said, one of the bits I used was, okay, put your hands up if you came here via boat. And everybody's hands come up. Now, visually, that's a powerful, visually it's very powerful. But at the same time, it's telling the audience something, but also keeping their identity anonymous in terms of the people I'm speaking to. I spoke to a woman who came from an African country where she's been persecuted because of her sexuality. She 100% had to be anonymous. So it's just finding different ways to get these stories in a way that it wasn't a shadow on a wall, which sometimes we have to do. So it's just filming it in a very unique way, whilst also being hot as fire. I was sweating so much in this country.
I could imagine.
So that was an example of you have to think on your feet and be just a good storyteller. And then also come back and you edit it. So some stories are very simple and some stories are very complicated. So that's kind of what dictates your day.
Yeah, I just wanted to ask you as well, in terms of the stories you have to report on. And I always find myself especially when you're doing stories in regards to someone losing their life, basically, whether it be an adult or a teenager. I just want to ask you, from your point of view, how do you almost kind of, if it's possible, to detach yourself, because you're reporting on something so horrible, so awful for the immediate families and people around the communities. And yes, you've got a job to do, Antoine, but is there a support network for you guys as reporters, or how do you sort of?
There is You can ring helplines. People will talk to you. But for me, I always say the job of the reporter is to help the person who has the story.
Yeah.
To try and get the viewers to care, to try and get the viewers to listen, try and get the government to do something. So because of that, I'm able to not take on that burden of their story onto me, but use my strength to try and uplift them, to make sure people listen, or to try and get it on TV to the best of my ability. There are sad stories. Like when you speak to any parent that lost a child, it's going to be heartbreaking. You speak to anyone that's been diagnosed with cancer and it's an incurable treatment and they're trying to raise money. There's so many different stories that are sad. It means that if you were to take all of them onto your soul, you'd be weighed down within a week. And that'd be the end of you. So all we can do really is just focus on why we're doing it, which is trying to help people. And then you just help people and then you move on. The biggest issue is, maybe some people are too young, but when Damiola Taylor died, huge reaction. Everybody reacted.
Massive.
Now that happens today, it's a smaller reaction. So people have become numb to the stories. And that's the biggest issue is knife crime exists for years, but the individual who's the story of that knife crime, that's one instance of it. That's their child. Although the stats exist, they're an individual. So it's understanding that they're not a statistic. But because the stats and the stories keep coming, people don't react remotely as much as you want them to. So sometimes you might secure an interview and think, oh my God, people are really going to care about this when the mum was crying and all that kind of stuff. And people don't react at all. And it's just you feel sad for the people who've taken time to tell their story. But then you also understand, which I didn't know until I started doing it, for a lot of parents, it's cathartic to be able to just talk to somebody about what they're going through and to feel that by telling their story, they might save someone. Like you might not stop all of knife crime, but by sharing your story, maybe a parent listened and checked their kid's bag, or they made sure that their daughter or their son got picked up that day. Like you don't know, but what sharing a story can do, even if it doesn't have the huge impact. I think we can't view things in terms of like a zero-sum game where it's just win or lose. The grey area in helping people is huge. So you just don't know the power of your words or doing something just because you don't see it. It might be a case where you did a report or you made a video or whatever it is, and one person watched it, but you helped that one person gain the confidence to think, oh, I can do that too. Like just because you didn't see a systemic change, you didn't see a news story or a headline, you can help people all the time. People just don't realize it. It's little things. Like I don't meet all the people that met me, but people who do meet me, who come up to me and say, oh, I loved your work or blah, blah, blah. Like they add up a lot. So there's way more people I'm never going to meet. So that's why you kind of have to keep doing what you're doing and think actually it can make a difference, even if it's not the huge impact I'd love straight away. Gradually, bit by bit, you kind of make a little bit of a change.
No, well said. It's interesting you say that in terms of people become numb to it. And I understand what you're saying with, obviously, I remember Damiola Taylor. Actually, I'm old, you know how old I am, Antoine. It's my birthday. Big up to people who said birthday wishes last Sunday. Another year older, 21 plus VAT. But I'm old enough to remember Stephen Lawrence. I was very young, but I was, I think I was 11, 12. But it's one of those cases, even now, is still spoken about. It just will never be forgotten. I don't think it's just a London thing. The enormity of what it was back then. And I remember, just a bit of a side note before I move on to a completely different thing. I remember, Antoine, I was in secondary school at the time, so this would only have been maybe 2 years after Stephen Lawrence, maybe 3 years. And I was young, but I'm very well aware of racism, man. Trust me. And we had to play. I used to go to Hasham Wood Secondary School in Brockley, which is called Crossways. It's a sixth form college now, I think. But I remember having to play an away game, and it's in Crown Woods, which anybody knows South East London is not far from where Stephen Lawrence lost his life. And I always say this, and people might not have heard me say it on my channel before. If people ask you in terms of how you've dealt with racism, or is there a specific time you remember it worse than others? And yeah, it was. And I was young. And playing that football match was probably the worst racial experience I've ever had in my life.
Wow.
Because all our team were black players apart from one. The atmosphere, the opposition team, the way the match panned out, it was a horrible atmosphere. It was awful. We actually won the game, believe it or not. But it's one of them cases, Antoine, and people listening, that you get in and you get out as quick as possible.
Yeah.
And even back then. So yeah, mad, absolutely crazy, man. But Antoine, now your insight and your knowledge, this is exactly why I want to get you on, because it's not about me talking. It's about I want to hear from the experts and the people that are in the hot seat, kind of thing. So no, I applaud you for that. Thank you, man. And we'll move on to the next one. Bit of a gear change, but this is what Life Stories is about in my channel. Favorite players. So your favorite ever Arsenal player, I probably know this, and why? And your favorite ever player of all time, whether that's domestically, outside of Arsenal, and worldwide.
So favorite Arsenal player is Thierry Henry. I think I had him on the back of my shirt for a long time. And weirdly, like, my mum supported Arsenal. She's the reason I support Arsenal. And she was like a big Patrick Vieira fan. And I interviewed Patrick when he was Crystal Palace manager.
Oh, I love him.
About being the only black manager in Premier League.
Yeah.
And took a picture with him. But that was a big moment for her rather than me. Even obviously I'm an Arsenal fan.
Of course. Yeah.
For me, he wasn't the person I would have spoken to if I had to choose any Arsenal player. It would be Henry.
Wow.
So yeah, when I played football, I played up front. But when I began in centre midfield. But then they were like, "Oh, have a go up front because it's the last game of the season. Now I start scoring goals." But when you don't grow up in London and you're black, you ain't gonna. It's hard to get scouted. Like, it's hard to get scouted.
Yeah.
So then also I became good at athletics. So then it meant that again you're juggling two worlds, and I just chose athletics because it's easy. The reason I love athletics is you're either fast or you're not. So it wasn't a scouting system. It wasn't someone picking you. It wasn't them turning up that day. You could basically build your own legacy off how hard you train. So yeah, with Henry, I used to watch this fast, dynamic, skillful, confident, vavavoom player, and it just like he was the guy. And then obviously he helped us win so much. So he was always that person. So in terms of world football, when I used to play like Wembley, that kind of stuff when you're a little boy, I still say Henry. Or it'd be Henry, or was like Ronaldo, but Brazilian Ronaldo.
Oh,
so those are the two players you pretend to be when I was growing up. You want to be one of those two players. I can still remember when England played Brazil and they played it in my school. Everybody's watching. So all of those little moments you kind of have with these legendary players, how you watched it, where you watched it. Obviously, I never met Brazilian Ronaldo. I think maybe I've walked past Henry, but not that close. So of the list of people I've like met, Henry's probably one of the only ones I haven't actually, who wanted to meet, who I haven't met. So I've interviewed Arsene Wenger, wanted to do that, Patrick, some legends as well in terms of Arsenal players, Tony Adams. But yeah, Henry's kind of been the elusive one. But at the same point, I've interviewed people I never expected to interview, so like Jose Mourinho, Sir Jeff Hurst, just lots of random people I just never expected. Like I was thinking about this the other day. I've interviewed the.
Yeah, who stands out for you? I was gonna ask that. You touched on it actually. Keep going. Sorry.
Well, the only rugby player to win the World Cup for England, so Martin Johnson. Interviewed him. Only cricket player to win the World Cup for us, Owen Morgan. I've interviewed him. I've interviewed the only female captain to win a cup for us in terms of the women's football, Leah Williamson. Interviewed her. But I interviewed Leah Williamson after. So the World Cup before the Euros. So she wasn't even that well known. Yeah. But that was the start of her journey, obviously. She got a couple minutes in the last game. So I interviewed her before she became Leah Williams.
Yeah.
So like when it comes to the winners in British sport, I've interviewed like most of them, which has always been a nice achievement. I interviewed Mo Farah a good few times. He's a good guy.
A lot of boxers as well.
So obviously, Anthony Joshua, Daniel Dubois, Alexander Usyk, Deontay Wilder. Only in terms of heavyweights, the only person I haven't interviewed is Tyson Fury, and I could have done it a few times, but the TV world didn't work out. But he's probably the only one I haven't had a sit down with. I interviewed Daniel Debrat and Frank Bruno at the same time, which was hard. But I'm always glad for Daniel's journey, because this is how small the black community can be.
God.
So Letitia Wright,
yes,
who's obviously Shuri in the Black Panther, her dad used to be my barber.
Oh wow!
So he'd be cutting my hair and saying, "Yeah, my daughter acts." I'm like, "Yeah, stick with it, man. Hopefully she's gonna get it." Not knowing who she was.
Yeah.
And then eventually he was like, "Oh yeah, my daughter's in the new Marvel movie." I'm like, "Who's your daughter?" He's like, "Letitia Wright." I was like, "Wait, your daughter's like certified." Anyway, so he used to cut my hair. He used to always say, "Double D, man. He's gonna be the future. Daniel Debrat is going to be the future." And I'm like, okay, whatever. So because he used to talk to me so much about Daniel, I then became a fan of Daniel because my barber was talking to me so much about it. And then eventually I interviewed him. It just kind of shows how weird the world can be sometimes, in terms of like someone talks to you about someone and then you end up like talking to them. So yeah, like it's a weird one. Like I've interviewed like huge names, but I'm Caribbean, I'm Jamaican. So I interviewed Usain Bolt. That was big.
That was brilliant. I must see
watching
so
he's a legend. So to be able to kind of tick off this list of people who are legends. So Jose's a legend. That was a great interview. It's like an hour with Jose. Arsene Wenger's a legend. So to be able to like just even it's only 5 minutes. To have 5 minutes with Wenger is like a big deal.
Yeah,
so
of course.
That was epic. That was epic. I interviewed Sir Viv Richards.
Oh wow!
Like again, like legend. Some people you interview knowing that they're not going to be around for much longer. So you're like, to even be in the space with them, and other people you interview, not because of yourself, but because you know someone in your family is like, oh my God, in that moment. So I told my grandparents, like, God, this means to Viv. Those little moments, you're blessed to have seen them on TV, and then to speak to them is a big deal. Sometimes you kind of forget that when you're just in the job, because you then have to edit it and put it on TV. Blah, blah. So yeah, those are kind of the biggest interviews in terms of the world of sport that I'd probably remember or show to someone, but there's been so many others. So like Beth Shriver won gold in Tokyo in the BMX. I was in her house with her dad, and then she came back in Tokyo. So that was a really nice interview because I could see what it meant for her and her family. Kai, who won silver, Peckham BMX, and that's huge for them. Obviously Mo Farah is just Mo Farah. I interviewed a woman called Imogen, who's a rower, and she won gold at the Olympics, but she's also a doctor. So the interview was her first day in the NHS. So the whole report around that, and that's one of the reasons I won this award. So that was like a huge moment.
I watched that.
Yeah, because she's just a good person, and she kind of showed how you can help people and also help yourself. So that was really nice. And then I interviewed a guy who won the doubles at the Australian Open, and we went back to his primary school, and he showed them Joe Salisbury showed them his trophy, and that was a nice coming back moment where he can show the kids, like, look,
brilliant,
this is what I've achieved, you can do that. And in Tuba, like I went back to Tuba secondary school with him, and all these kids are going wild and oh my God, because then they can realize it's true and it can happen. Like you can go from playing in the playground to playing in the Premier League to playing for what PAOK FC, Ajax, Middlesbrough, and now he's at Lyon. Like obviously Arsenal, so and Hull City as well. You can show these young people that if you're focused, even if you have setbacks, you can keep going. And in terms of Arsenal, obviously recently interviewed Chloe Kelly.
Brilliant, love that one.
So Chloe's a really nice person. That was nice. Declan Rice for the No More Red campaign.
Yeah, he's
super nice. Just leadership qualities. Just born leader. So he felt genuine that he cared about the issue. Emil Smith-Rowe, Reece Nelson, again, both of them cared about the issue. Just a nice chat. I've briefly interviewed Arteta. It was a Zoom, so it wasn't amazing. Lewis Hamilton, again, it was a Zoom, But it's still nice just to kind of tick him off the list.
Yeah,
But
of course.
I do want to do a proper sit down with Lewis. He's a hard person to get hold of. And that's it, really. Like, it's probably
Really.
those are the names I can kind of reel off.
Yeah.
But then there'll be someone else. I'll look back on like the show and think, I interviewed my man. Because of the nature of what I was doing before, I spent a long time talking to Eddie Davids. I spent a long time talking to Ruud Gullit because it was an event. So it was a lot. If you mentioned, I interviewed Jason Robinson as well. So Jason Robinson, that was a sit-down event. So it was basically a watch-along. So it was me and Jason for like 3 hours just talking, and it was really cool. Like he told me some cool stuff. So like, he was a good guy. So that's the thing. When you do so many interviews, you forget. Like I interviewed Daniel Kaluuya, which I just remembered. So Oscar winner. So Oscar winners, World Cup winners, Olympic gold medalists, world champion boxers, politicians,
of course,
Sadiq Khan, mayors. So like the cross section of the interviews I had is kind of huge, but those standout names are the ones that really have something that's connected to you. Someone that you watched on TV, somebody that you only dreamed of meeting, someone you never dreamed of meeting. Like I completely forgot. I interviewed Jackie Chan like 3 weeks ago. I'd never even.
Yeah, you can't forget.
I used to watch martial art. Like I used to watch Jackie Chan all the time. So they were like, "Oh, do you want to interview Jackie Chan?" I was like, "Oh yeah, cool, man." So that was like, and he was cool. And then also Ralph Macchio. He was the new Karate Kid.
Yeah, man.
The same point, it also shows like some people were gassed for Ralph Macchio and some people were gassed for Jackie Chan. Whereas me, I used to watch Karate Kid all the time, but Jackie Chan's Jackie Chan. Like he's not living off one movie. So so that was fun. That was fun. So the nature of London, it can be so many people you talk to, and then you move on. And I always say, like, working in the news is like being a Michelin star chef at McDonald's. There's always another order of fries. It doesn't matter how well you made those previous fries. There's always going to be another order. So you end up forgetting what you've done until you. Yeah, it's a conveyor belt. You end up forgetting it, and you think back, and someone asks you a question, and you're like, okay. So what I wanted to do, which I never did, I bought an autograph book, and I wanted each person I interviewed to sign it. So then by the end of my career, I would have had loads of autographs. I just never did it. So what I do have is random memorabilia. So Lawrence Okoli, who I didn't mention, Lawrence is my boy, he became a world champion. So I have a signed glove from him. I've got a signed shirt from Ryan Giggs. I've got a signed armband from Cristiano Ronaldo, who I never met. But when I was in Italy doing the Champions League final, the person I was working alongside, he knew the coach driver for Real Madrid. So then he got me a signed armband, which is randomly in my room. I've got a signed book from Per Mertesacker, who I interviewed, and I said to him, he'd just become the head of the academy, who's going to be the next big player? And he said, Bukayo Saka. Like, he's coming through, he's going to blow up. And that season, he blew up.
That's right.
And then Paloma Faith, I have a signed Paloma Faith, like, vinyl, and I don't even have a vinyl player. So she's a Brit Award winner.
Yeah.
What else do I have? I think that's it. But like lots of just Jason Robertson. I've got Jason Robertson's interview on a picture. And then Jonah signed the ball from me, which I gave to my mum. I'm pretty sure she's lost it now. So I've got loads of these random stuff, like those memories, but it all lives inside your mind. And what I try to do, I've got a little folder in my phone of pictures when I've taken a picture with you. So that kind of keeps it together a little bit. But in the end, you can't live in the moment. Because the experience is yours, telling people about it. Like if I was to write a book, the book would be That's a Good Question. And it'd be talking about all of those interviews, the process, what they were like in that moment, whether it was quick or how long I had. Like with AJ in terms of Anthony Joshua, I've interviewed him so many times, it's hard to interview him now because I've asked him every question there is to ask him pretty much.
Yeah, of course.
So, but then the moment changes, obviously it's a different fight, but then he's getting older, so then you're kind of trying to get more out of him. So it's a good challenge. You have to think outside the box, and you're trying to think, okay, what does he mean to people? What does he want to say? What do I want him to say in terms of to tell me? And you're trying to search for that answer, but then you understand it's a changing of the guards. Like there's now Daniel Debra's time. So I'm like, oh, how can I help elevate him? How can I help tell his story?
Antoine, have you interviewed Conor Benn and Chris Eubank Jr.?
No, we haven't. So I interviewed Nigel Benn.
Okay, yeah,
So
Nigel.
Nigel came in an interview. So there's a good documentary called Four Kings, which is about Nigel Benn, Chris Eubank, Frank Bruno, and Lennox Lewis. So to
Wow.
promote that, I interviewed Nigel, and Nigel's a super nice guy. Nigel and Connor, like, they're proper father and son. So Connor came and he just sat down, eating some food whilst I did the interview, and then him and Nigel went for food. So he was there, obviously said hello, but I've never spoken to him. I've never met Chris properly. I went to Carnival and
Yeah.
Chris was behind me, so that was the closest we've really been. I've never interviewed his father either, but I know people who know him.
Yeah.
So I never done either of them, but it's good to see what happened with their fight in terms of the legacy.
Yeah.
The two surnames.
Absolutely. Yeah.
But also, it was a spectacle, and it kind of showed once again that boxing, probably more so than any other sport, relies on storytelling, and that story was told really well. But no, I've never spoken to either of them. Like I said, I never interviewed Tyson Fury, but outside of that, I've interviewed most of the biggest names there is in British sport. So not Amir Khan, not Ricky Hatton, but mainly in terms of the heavyweights, I've spoken to most of them.
Oh, well said. God, the intuition, man, incredible, bro. So, people, like I said, when you watch this back, you're watching live, smash the like button, follow Antoine channel. I did put it in the chat, and it's also in the bio and description. One more question to wrap up, and this is a very good one. Hopefully, you can tuck into this. So, yes, social media interaction. How have you found combining your work with the use of social media? How's it changed how you work? Yeah, go on, mate.
The nature of all media is, and this is probably the advice for anybody who wants to be on TV or do social, is you got to build numbers. Like it is a numbers game, but building authenticity and building community is the better thing to do. Like right now, the algorithm is your enemy because it limits who you can reach. But with that said, like if I have something really important, people react to the story, but I can't always get them to share it.
Yeah.
So there's no point having 200,000 followers if you can't get 20 people to click retweet. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's better to have 100 followers, whereas 100 followers are always engaged. But the issue is people leading their own lives. That's why the numbers of social media, it's hard because to you, it's a number that relates to you. To them, you're one of 1,000 people that followed. So numbers can both make you feel good and make you feel bad because you're like, whoa, I want people to follow me, but how comes they're all following the influencer? How comes they're following whoever? Like lots of people have crazy following who don't really do that much in society. But I've had millions of views for important stories. I get paid to make the news, so I don't live off social media, which is a good thing. So combining the two is, whilst normal TV is slowly dying, as I said, it needs to get the reach on social media. The issue with social media is I can make the story, put it online, another page takes my video and then puts it on their page, gets hella views, they grow, and then I'm floundering at whatever number I am. And it's like, well, you don't realize the person that made the story is the most important part of it, because if they don't get the support, they don't do that story anymore, then you haven't got anything to steal. So it's a weird situation where it helps you a bit. Like I've got fairly big following for a TV reporter, whereas back in the day though, TV reporters would have hella following, but because there's so much on social media, most TV reporters my age, they don't have no following. Like unless they do something that's like entertainment based, they don't really have that much following, like in the news world.
Yeah.
So that's the challenge, is getting people to follow, getting people to support. But then the same point, the nature of social media, it goes off controversy. Whereas I'm supposed to be the neutral part of it. So it's hard for me to say, at least it's something blatant like knife crime is bad. Like, obviously, everybody knows that. But when it's like a political party or whatever, I can't voice my opinion on it like I'm a normal person. I'm a TV person, or TV news person. So it means that because I say social media is driven a lot by controversy or just strong opinions, I can't give a strong opinion because of the nature of my work. So I can't ride that wave to get more followers. So when I was just a YouTuber talking about stuff, my videos were getting like crazy views because I was just talking about stuff. But now I disseminate information. I say, this person says this. Or I went here and I looked at this. And it's not my docs aren't in a controversial way. It's just information. And it's not it's harder. Basically, it's harder to make films for TV. Sorry, it's hard to make a film for TV do well on social media because there's different rules for TV. Whereas on social media, there's no rules, so you can make something very controversial and it'll get hella views. Whereas in TV, it needs to be neutral and right of reply and all kinds of stuff, which limits its impact to an extent. So that's some of the challenges. But the main challenge is building a community, as I tried to allude to since I've been rambling. Like, if you can build a community, whatever size, it helps you. If it's 10, if it's 100, if it's 1,000, if it's 1,000,000, like, that's what you need. It's people who will comment, who will like, who will share, who will interact. And I have a community that will comment if it's like a black story, and then comment if it's me doing something that's like successful, i.e. number 10 or get my hair done or whatever. But when it's something that's like sport, my Instagram people don't really say nothing. The YouTube people will obviously comment. So it's a weird situation where I don't have a consistent community all the time, because some people are interested in different stuff. So that's the difficulty, because it's news rather than a podcast. So if I was doing a podcast like this, where every week it's me just interviewing someone, you tune in to watch the person do the interview rather than who they're interviewing. Sorry, the reason it flipped is because my the battery just went on my stand. So it's a case where social media is just it's hard to navigate when you're making buffets, basically. If you can stick to one or two things consistently, you're more likely to be able to gain the audience and to get the positive aspects from it. The negative aspects are people comment how you look, people comment on your race, people make all kinds of stuff. But I always said this, unless you're doing something completely bad, most people get more positive comments than they get negative. But the issue with society and people, me too, is we will comment about the negative one without acknowledging the many positive ones. So, but then also people react to the negative. Like if I put up a comment saying, "Oh, this person called me this," that post will get hella likes and hella people will be like, "Oh, it's messed up." If I put a comment saying, "Oh, this is a really nice comment I got, thank you," barely anyone will say anything. So it's just, we want to react to somebody, to be more likely to help someone that seems like they're being attacked than applaud somebody that's being cheered. Do you know what I mean? Like, we don't like to. So it's a situation where it's hard to break human nature right now. So you can either feed the algorithm or do something completely different and then get no views or comments or likes. So that's why I kind of want TV to continue as long as it can, because you just make it and people react afterwards. Whereas when you're making stuff yourself, you need the views there and then. You need the comments there and then, so it can sway you to making stuff. But with that said, I'm going to start making more of my own stuff, and that's where it's going to be a challenge. So when I make the documentary about food, I'm going to be annoyed if people don't watch it. Like, so it's going to be annoying.
You want people to watch
I hate that.
You do.
Because you put effort in. And I always say this is the takeaway from the ramble I've just given you. The same. All views are exactly the same, but the effort put in to get views is different. So someone could upload a video of their cat playing with a ball and get 1 million views. And someone could upload a 60-minute documentary where they went around the world and, I don't know, found the fastest kid alive, and then also, I don't know, invented something, and they also get 1 million views. But one cost them 0 pence to make, and only time it takes them to upload. The other one cost tens of thousands of pounds, but they'll be in the same place and get the same views. And that's the issue with social media, really, where the value and the time you put into something doesn't determine the views. But you still need to put value and time into it for you to get the views if you're making something that's substantial.
And that's the key thing.
So it's hard. It's hard to do that when you're like, well, there's people who just react to other people's content. Obviously, they get hella views. There's people who do cat videos or whatever. They get hella views. But if you want to do something like, okay, I want to do documentaries that explore complex issues, that's multiple days of filming, and you do all that, and you get 200 views. You're like, well, Like, why did I do that? So it's working out a business model where it's actually, number one, you've got to build your community to be able to make sure you're making something that people want to watch. And number two, it's like, well, can I get some funding? Is there a way where I can really make what I want to watch because it's impactful? Maybe get it into cinema. So I get, for example, Nadine White, who's the race correspondent for The Independent. She made a documentary called Barrel Children herself, did a screening in Brixton. Like, that's a big deal. Doing it yourself is a big deal. So, like, a big respect out to her for doing that. Like, that's what I want to do. Like, I want to make this doc and then have enough funding that I can do a screening so people who care can just turn up and they can watch. Maybe they pay £5, which helps cover some of the cost of the production, or just covers the cost of, example, for you to host an event at the Roxy in Brixton, it's between like £600 and £1,000 to hire the cinema. So it's not cheap.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Like, you'd have to know 100 people are going to turn up, and those 100 people are willing to spend £10 each, and then they get to watch the film and that kind of stuff. Like, it's not easy to make important stories, basically. So that's the power of social media, is to connect you with people, but also to let you down, where you're like, well, I thought people cared. People told me to make this and nobody turned up, or people told me to make it, nobody viewed. So I'll give you an example with Tool Fair. The first day when it was on ITV News, the YouTube channel, it was scraping to get like 1,000 views or something. I was like, what's going on, man? Like, I've put a lot of effort into this. Now it's at 87,000, which is okay. But at the same point, like, to begin with, I was like, man, like, nobody's watching this. Yeah, but the issue is, it'd already been on TV, it'd already been online, a smaller version. But once it started getting momentum, I was like, now the effort shows.
Yeah.
Because then I can go back to the TV world and say, look, 87,000 people watched it. Yeah, like, it matters. Let's do more. But if only 100 people watch it, they're like, well, why did we make this if only 100 people watches it? So that's the issue with social media. Like, obviously, I talk about the racing all day, but it's making people understand that, especially with news or just important stories, if you watch, you like, you comment, it inspires people to do more. And even with content creators, if you start a particular interview style and then people are like, yeah, I really like that, and you see lots of comments telling you that, you're going to do more of it. You'll make more videos like that. So when you're given that feedback, you can influence that channel. If you liked it and didn't say nothing, didn't click like, and then you wonder later on, like, oh, how come he's not doing it anymore? It's because you didn't tell them. So that's why it's important for, like, social media for you to comment. And like me, I love debates and discussions, but it's hard to keep a civil tongue as Antoine Allen, ITV News. Like, people don't know you beyond what they've seen. Like, you wear a suit on TV. Whereas me, like, I know as a little boy, I actually love, like, arguing with people. Like, I'm actually argumentative. So it's like I have to hold my tongue and be, like, polite in the comments. But really, like, I could be checking people. Like, I'm very good with my work. Yeah. So it's like, you have to understand you're an adult, you're a role model and all this other good stuff. Yeah. So those are the things where you just, like, you get a racist comment and you want to say something ridiculous back. Yeah. Then you're like, what's the point? Like, the best quote I've heard is, when dogs bark at the moon, it's just another day. When the moon barks back, that's when it's a story. And that's true. Like, if that person's come to you, they've found you on wherever you are, you're the moon to them. Even if they're saying hateful stuff, the minute you interact with them, you're giving them prominence. And sometimes you do want to say something to somebody, and other times it's like, is it worth it? Because you don't win. They're not going to be like, man, I've changed the error of my ways because of your comment, your reply. No, exactly. So even if you won, you'd only win one time out of 100. So the energy you're putting in on that hate, you could be putting onto someone that's appreciated you, saying thank you to someone that commented. So then next time they're going to comment again, because they'll be like, you know what? He said thank you. Like, he acknowledged my comment. Now you're building a community rather than reacting to ignorance. So that's what I've learned over time. If I could go back in time, I would have done more behind the scenes videos of my reports to then put on social media. Right. Here I am today. This is who I'm speaking today. And that's like why my socials don't match the amount of people that know me. And even now, because obviously I haven't left the media, I should do it. But to go back to a previous question, when you're actually working, you're not thinking of videos about your work.
No.
So it's hard in those respects. But with that said, like when I do the boxing, I usually do a little social video, but then I usually do it in a story and it disappears. But I should really think of like stuff that's become not a big deal to me is a big deal to other people. It's just that I've done it before. Like if I'm Wembley, if I'm at O2, if I'm in Down, like all this stuff, like I've experienced it now. But to the person that's watching you, they're not there. So it's good to tell them that story, to take them that journey, and also to let people know how the stuff works. Like I interviewed some scaffolders. They got their own YouTube channel. They get like 50,000 views per video because I don't know anything about scaffolding. So lots of people don't know. So when they make their channel, people tune in because they're interested. So something that's boring to you could be really interesting to someone else. But make sure you got the permission of your work before you start doing stuff like that. You don't want to lose your job for social media unless you want to lose your job for social media, and then social media becomes your job. But yeah, so that's probably my experience in terms of speaking my truth in the comments. You can argue with people and you feel good in the moment. In the end, it's not worth it. So for me, I might drop a comment on that Shabra, like every so often, just to be funny and just to like just to have fun with it. Because it's also good to feed your own mental health and having fun. But then I'll go back and delete that comment the following day, regardless of what I said. Because I won't say nothing crazy. But sometimes I'm like, I get bored of notifications. Like I don't like notifications going longer than 24 hours because then you're missing something else. So I'm I'm good. Like if I'm going to debate with somebody, have a discussion, even have an argument, 24 hours does not pass when we continue with that. Like you get my time for a little period of time, and I say what I need, and that's it. Because at that point they're not going to listen. Like I was having a debate with someone on my number 10 post. Yeah. And I was like, this person's not even listening. They're just making statements. And I'm like, that's cool for you, but I've got stuff to do. So we're going around in a circle where you're not listening. I'm listening to you, but let's just keep it moving. Yeah. So it's understanding that it doesn't matter how rich you are, time doesn't come back. So you have to always value your time. And sometimes wasting your time is important in terms of if it's for your mental health, whether it's having fun on the game or watching the anime, whatever it is, have ownership of your time, whether it's positive or negative or whatever it is. But if you allow a negative person to drag you down into a discussion that's taken an hour of your time away, what could you have done in that hour? What could you have watched? What could you have read? So it's better to just think, okay, I always have ownership of what I do. If I do something that's going to waste my time, I've decided to do something that's positive, I've decided to do that. Give yourself some treats, but also understand that you can't live off sweets. You've got to build up an appetite in terms of your knowledge of strong meals, and that's your reading, your watching, and your interactions.
No, well said. I think before we wrap up, in terms of social media, I don't think I'm pretty good at when to leave it alone. I think sort of doing YouTube, it's not even doing YouTube. I'd say YouTube stroke social media, full stop, is I think what I've definitely seen, particularly in the last 3 or 4 years, is how somebody's opinion doesn't even have to be controversial. Just somebody stating their own feelings and thoughts about a particular subject. I've always said, Anton, one thing I don't talk about on social media is politics. And I don't. Because it's such a diverse, it's something that just triggers people.
It's tribal.
Yeah, it's very tribal. Yeah, so I try not to, but I'm pretty good with it. But I think with the social media interaction, I sort of pick and choose my moments. And the main time you really see me on there is either talking about Arsenal or just talking about my content or whatever, which is even that's not even safe sometimes, to be honest with you. Depending
on like there's a good South Park episode where they go in search of like a troll farm and they do an algorithm which is like I forgot the name they're giving it, but it was basically the troll reaction algorithm. So it begins with like person A makes a statement, person B disagrees with that statement, person C disagrees with person B just for the sake of continue that argument, and then it spirals out like a spider's web and it gets really complicated. There's some people who just want to argue. There's some people who just want a reaction. There's some people who have worked out, like there's loads of social media videos now where people say something that they know is incorrect, knowing that people will comment to correct them, and that feeds the algorithm. Or they'll say, there's a comedian who always like says, oh, I'm not going to wash my feet, or I only wash once a year. She's lying, but she knows the social media reaction is people coming to cuss her and say stuff and blah, blah, blah. And that feeds her channel and she gets hella views. Like, if you like, you're more likely to start a YouTube channel and say crazy stuff and get more views than someone that says stuff correct. Example, do you remember there was a singer called Ice Fish or something? He's like an American guy that couldn't sing.
Yeah.
He's a mixed race American guy, or he had light skin. He was a bad singer, but because he was so bad, he got hella views for being bad. Or Rebecca Black for that Friday song. Like, you either got to be the best singer of all time or the worst singer. Like that middle ground. But social media is just a weird place. Like I said earlier, we react to negativity more than we react to positivity. That's why it's not worth getting engaged into negativity, because you don't know if it's even real or is it worth your time.
No, well said, well said. People, we have come to a close. Well, Antoine, thank you for coming on, but also congratulate you personally on this award. Like, I think this was 2025, right? But obviously it's a 2024. You went to the awards, right?
Yeah.
No, but no, I know. Obviously, I know you say it's not about the awards, but I guess it's nice when because you've been nominated for multiple awards.
Yes, I remember I've been nominated for 9 awards.
Yeah,
this was the 9th. That means you're sat in the awards room. They read out everybody's name. Your heart beats a little bit. You read someone else's name, and then you kind of get a pat on the back from whoever you're sat with, saying, "Oh man, I think you should have won," and then you go home. So it is annoying after a while not winning, even if you're like someone that's like it's not about the award, because you're there anyway. So you'd be nice to take stuff home. But at the same point, when I did win, they basically read out a summary of the person that's won or their work. And when they were reading that out, I forgot that I did a climate change story. So when they began on climate change, I'm like, they're reading someone else. So I'm recording with my phone the moment. And because I thought they were reading someone else, I stopped recording. I was like, I had given awards to other people. And then they were like, and also exemplary report on youth violence. I was like, wait, that's me. So I started recording again. And there's like a gap in the video, basically. But they sent me the full thing anyway. But so now walked through the back of the room because I was one of the judges for a different category. Walk all the way to the front, and Jim White's one of the presenters. He gives me the award. It's well done. And people hadn't been given speeches. They just said thank you and they moved on. And I was like, no, man, like this is a moment. You're supposed to say something that's worth hearing. So I had been thinking of a speech. So basically, when you lose, you have an unused speech in your mind the whole time. Who you would have thanked, what you would have said. But for me, I always say, whenever you're given the microphone, say something that's worth hearing. And that's beyond just me saying thank you. Obviously, I said thank you.
Yeah.
I basically wanted to right a wrong or break down a misinformation. In the media, and probably the same in other career paths, the myth is the longer you do something, the more successful you'll be. When actually, it's the longer you do it, times by the support you're giving during that period. Mm-hmm. So example, it takes the same amount of time using compound interest for you to turn £1 into £10 as it does to turn 100,000 into 1 million. But the person who's given 100,000 to begin with will obviously achieve more during the same period of time as the person who's given £1, because that 100,000 is 999,000 chances to fail. It's more chances to risk things. It's more chances to try things. When you've only got £1 to your name, like I don't know anyone that could turn £1 into £10. Like what would you do? What could you? But you get a lottery ticket, and if you got lucky, that lottery ticket might go in. But as soon as you've done that one lottery ticket, what happens if you don't win? Like you got no £1 now. Whereas if you had 100 grand, there's 100,000 chances to win the lottery. So I said that in the audience. I said, look, there's somebody in your newsroom who's only got £1, and they're dreaming of getting to 1 million, and they want to be on this stage. Whereas there's other people who maybe turn up in the news with the right surname, the right connections, the right school, the right look, whatever it is, they've got 100 grand, and you're still giving them more opportunities on top of that 100 grand. Like for me, everybody should be given the same chances to succeed. And then after that is what you do with the money. Like if someone gave you 10 grand and you fumbled it, then cool. But if someone only gave you £1 and you had one chance and you messed it up, and other people are given 100 grand, it's not fair. So that's why I said when I won my award, I haven't watched it back because it wasn't my best delivery, but I said it.
You should.
It lives on my laptop. Because the delivery wasn't great, I never uploaded it. But it's just a case where I said what I wanted to say.
Yeah.
People who got it come up to me and was like, "Thank you for saying it." People who never got it weren't ever going to get it, and they're often the people that hold power. But it is what it is. Because then I always say, anyone that hires me knows what they get. I can keep it real. So everything I've achieved is through me being true to myself and what I believe in. I've never kneeled for nothing. I don't beg for nothing. But it makes it harder for you to move up the mountain, such as life. But like I said previously, in terms of social media, if you take ownership of your decisions, then you'll be happy with what you get in life, because you'll be like, you know what, I'm here because I decided to be here. I could have done something else. I could have said something else. Could have acted some different way. But then also, when you do achieve something, no one can be like, it's because of me you got that type thing. Because your work speaks for itself, because you had to grind so hard. The hurdles you had to overcome were so high that it refines you and you get better. And hopefully when you get to where you're supposed to be, you're great at what you do because of the struggles you've had to get there.
Well said. Well said. Antoine, I want to thank you for coming on to our JTV Live Stories. It's been an absolute honor to get your knowledge and your delivery. I've watched you on screen for a long, long time. I've had the pleasure of meeting you, obviously. And I think for me, when I always say this, and people who are part of my community or watch me have heard me say this plenty of times. As much as I have a channel, I'm also a consumer. I watch content. It's very important to do that because there's things that you might want to introduce or do. But I know sometimes you don't get a lot of time to speak with the people that you speak to. Particularly politicians, is not very easy. I watched the Sunday Politics show with Laura Kusenberg and the way she goes for them. Because the thing is, if you let them just talk, they're going to talk their way out of it. So you have
exactly.
You have to pose the questions, but the way your delivery, the way you do it, and we're like, you know what? I'm glad Antoine got to ask that question, and not only ask certain questions, but the way you deliver it is the most important thing. Delivery is very, very important. So like I said, I've been very lucky myself to have met you and got some amazing opportunities thanks to other Arsenal podcasters or even being in the mainstream. I like to think I've worked hard to do it, and sometimes people actually like to listen to what I say. But
yeah, of course, you do
one thing I've always learned: no one has to help you.
No.
And people have to understand that, and it's particularly in the content creating world, because not everybody wants to help you. They want to grow their channel. Even if they've got 100,000 subscribers, they don't have to help you. And you have to learn it the hard way. Not everybody wants to collaborate with you. That is the nature of the beast. You get your head around it, work on yourself. If it goes to the old school way of getting an A4 sheet of paper, a Sharpie, and write down some ideas and brainstorm, you have to do it.
Also, persistence is king. Like with me, like obviously I've been busy, and you could have quite easily been like, "Nah, I'm not going to bother. He's too busy." But you kept messaging, which meant it meant something to you, and we got down. We've done it now, and persistence is king. Like example with me, with Patrick Vieira, it took months to get that interview, like months. So it's like you've got to be persistent. And a lot of the time, I see people they get one rejection or the reply doesn't come that week, and they're done. No, you got to continue. Like everything for me can be analogous to sport. You got to keep running to get the end of the marathon. Like if you give up too early, you don't know when your second wind is coming. You don't know when it's your chance to shine. You don't know when that person's going to reply. So it's like constantly letting people know, I'm here, I'm ready. I'm here, I'm ready. And then when opportunity knocks, you got to take it. You got to take it. And also, like, only you know how good you are. Other people will judge you from what they see, what they hear, what they're told. So you've got to prove to them, or even to yourself, I'm good and I'm ready. And then when you do it, often what happens, the reaction is not what you want in terms of, well, I did a good job and they're still not giving me more. Okay, well, you got to do more. You just constantly got to do more. Like you said, nobody's going to give you stuff.
No,
so the only thing that can give you is, only person that can give you something is yourself. So if you decide to make your own channel and you decide to film things and you decide to write a blog, then you're more in charge of your own destiny. But as soon as you enter the world where you interact with people, then you have to find a way to make them see value in that interaction. Otherwise, you're living off handouts. And eventually people stop giving off handouts. But when they see that talking to you or working with you gives them value, they will reply in time. They will get back to you. And if it's not straight away, but eventually they'll do it. When it's someone who's they're thinking that's going to waste their time, then you're at the bottom of their list. Or you're not on their list at all. So it's just understanding like, okay, well, how can I move up the list? How can I add value to them? How can I improve myself? And just keep pushing forward and understand the rejection is not a rejection of you. It's just that person is in a different space to you in that moment in time. And eventually you might come back. Like I said, I was rejected by the BBC like 3 times. I don't work there now, but I'm ITV. So it is what it is. Like it happens. But you just got to keep pushing forward.
No, well said, people. Big ups to Antoine. Like I said, this will go out on audio platforms. So I will clip some bits and put it out on all my socials when I get the chance to do so. But I want to thank Antoine for his time and your due diligence and just being a top guy, man. It's been a pleasure to meet you. So that's great to get you on, man.
Thanks a lot, brother. Keep doing your thing, man.
What's coming up next?
Seeing your journey. What's coming up next? Just the news. I always say every day there's news. So that's what's going on now. There'll probably be some more tool theft related stuff. But beyond that, I'm just kind of going on this news journey, and then eventually I'll get back to working on something a little bit longer. But that's the mainstream. In terms of social media, as I said, I'm going to start putting together the plan for this food documentary, and then hopefully people will react to that, and then off the back of that, we'll see what happens.
No, well said. But no, like I said, thank you for your time, man. I really appreciate it. It's been a long time coming, man. It's
been a long time.
You can't let it. Like I said, I know you're a busy man. So big up to people who did pop up in the chat. Thank you for that. And like I said, that is Albert J TV over and out for episode 22. Like I said, Antoine did make the final 22, so he timed it very, very well. We'll talk about Arsenal another time. That's another subject. We're not going to do that today. So I want to enjoy the rest of my weekend. But people, like I said, subscribe to the channel and follow Antoine. His channel link is in the description. So I will see you soon. Albert J TV over and out.